What's up and welcome to Ahead of the Curve. I am Jonathan Gellner, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have on a familiar face with baseball podcasts in Jeremy Sheetinger, who is also the head baseball coach at Georgia Gwinnett College. Sheets is by far one of the most popular baseball coaches in the world. After working for the American Baseball Coaches Association and running the ABCA podcast, he took the job at GGC last year. So on the show, we discuss what he has learned during the 4 years he stepped away from the field and how he has implemented so much information into what they do at GGC. We go all in on competitions, classroom sessions, and how to teach the middle game. And coaches, if you're looking for a copy and paste episode, Sheets delivered. This episode is so good, and here is Jeremy Sheetinger. Sheets, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, JG. I appreciate the opportunity, my man.
Of course. I feel like every time I talk, I get goosebumps because I'm like, okay, let's just go play something right now. Like let's go compete at just something. And you sound great. I love the podcasting equipment. That's always a nice touch. But for our listeners who recognize the voice, and they probably, I'm sure everyone that listens to my show has heard something on your show or just, anything in general, and they recognize that. But there may be some people who are curious as to who Sheets is and why everybody talks about him. But can you give us just a short snapshot of where you're at, and then we'll just kind of roll from there?
Sure. Well, right now I'm currently the head coach at Georgia Gwinnett College, one of the top NAI programs in the country. I'm also host of the Untitled Chapter podcast powered by Stick and Ball TV, and then speak at a lot of different conventions and especially a lot of virtual ones here lately. And then past that, man, this will be my 17th year of coaching. Spent 11 years coaching across all levels of baseball. I spent 4 years out of the game, and I was literally coaching coaches at the ABCA and doing their podcast and social platforms, all that good stuff. And then got back out of that space, back into coaching. And this is going on my second year here at GGC, and fired up, man.
No, I love that. And we were talking off the mic earlier about how we get the pleasure of interviewing some of, the world's best coaches.
Yeah.
But we also have the opportunity to be able to try and distill what they do well and to try and put it into whatever program that we're a part of. And it's not always easy. And so I'm really excited to get to hear, you've done probably 200 plus episodes and you've spoke at different places around the country and around the world. But let's go ahead and let's just take it from day one at GGC. Okay. So you get hired. Everybody, you do the press conference, which was cool, and it was on Twitter and everything, and it was really, really well done. Then you get the keys, and you are like, okay, what do we do for day one? Okay, so what did the vision look like for you? And I know knowing you were well prepared, and it was something that you had prepared for. Yeah. So what did that look like, and what were some of your first steps whenever you took over?
I love it, man. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk through this. And I'll start maybe a month before the press conference is when this became real. So back in around Omaha time, the job had come up and I had applied, and I felt like I was going to be able to at least get in the room, maybe on a phone interview. And, but I felt drawn towards this job. I mean, that's the one thing I've always come back to is, I loved my job at ABCA. I feel like I had the best job in the country. I was making a heck of a lot more money than I would as a coach. Had a lot of freedom within what I did. And we created some really cool learning platforms and communication platforms, and just felt, extremely connected with coaches and our members. And I don't know, man, I was really torn between, am I really going to leave this to go back to coaching? But at the same time, and I've said this a lot, my last year, my fourth year, I felt drawn back to coaching. I thought about it a lot more. My heart was, starting to drift back towards, man, I can still do this. And then I think more of it comes back to this, John, is like, I really felt like, I don't know, man, I felt like I had a chance. If I were to go back to coaching, I could rewrite my own script. And you and I have talked very openly, and certainly I have on the various podcast episodes very openly about looking at 11 years and feeling like, honestly, I served myself. It wasn't about the players, and it wasn't about relationships, and it wasn't about their growth, and it wasn't about those things. It was more about hey, if I win this game, if we win this championship, if we go to the World Series, if we win a national championship, if all these things happen, then man, where am I going to be able to go from there? I'm going to be able to get whatever job I want. I'm going to move my career and I'm advanced this way. And so anyway, I talked about that very openly because it was a great learning opportunity to go, if you go back, man, you've got to be organized a little bit differently. You've got to rewire what matters, and you've got to focus on the things that are extremely important and keep those always important. So anyway, I go through that transition of applying and absolutely dominating the phone interview and getting on campus and crushing that. I had our alumni weekend this past weekend, and I got a chance to tell some of those stories. And where it comes back to is during the course of that, I sat down and I constructed this, you're going to laugh, 39-page, basically manual. Wow. This is who I am. This is my interview packet. And so you could open it up and it's my resume, and here's my real cover letter relative to the job. And here are my thoughts on recruiting, my thoughts on team development, staff development, my thoughts on, and you went the whole way, 39 pages. And I made one for each member of the hiring committee, and very proud of what I put together. And in the course of doing that, man, I'm telling you, that is probably one of the best exercises I've ever done of organizing my thoughts. Because as to your point, so many podcast episodes, so many conversations, so many different ideas. Well, you can't do it all. And you've got to be able to comb through it, chew on it, digest it, swallow it. And what comes out has to be authentically you. Like, I can't run Eric Backage's program at Michigan here. Mm-hmm. I can bring elements from there. I can bring elements from Vanderbilt. I can bring elements from UCLA. I can bring all those, but I've got to sort them through me, and then I've got to make them authentically us. This has to fit our situation. It's hard to run, San Diego State's program here at Georgia Gwinnett. It has to work at each spot. And so a lot of the things I sorted through and where I landed all came back to, as I mentioned a second ago, it's got to be about the players. Like, your whole focus, the whole, construction of the program, the environment we're trying to create, the leadership from the top. Not, and I use this as an example a lot, not from the top down, actually from the bottom up. How can we get behind our players and make them at the forefront and use them as the rock stars and create an environment where they feel like they've got a staff that just serves them on a daily basis? And then I think when you start to direct that way, I think everything stems off that. So I gave a coaching clinic over the weekend, and one of the things I came back to was, I don't think you can do anything, and I firmly believe this, you can't do anything you ever want to do on the baseball field if you don't have trust and you don't have love. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing on a daily basis to create trust from coach to player, player to coach to coach, player to player? How can you develop love within that entire group? What are those things that are tying this group together so that you can build accountability, you can understand responsibility, you can create and develop and enhance leadership? You can do those things, but they come from trust and love. And so, again, long story short, I go through this whole process, man. And when I hit the ground day one, to me, it was actually pretty simple. Number one, day one, literally coming out of that press conference, and we had, I think from that point, there was like a 5-hour drive down to Hilton Head. We were going on a vacation, and I literally called every single player that day. And so from 5:30 until roughly 10:30 at night, it was my last call. I called every single player to make sure they understood, this is who I am. I have your back. I know I didn't recruit you. I can't pick you out of a crowd, but I have your back. And so if you give me the opportunity to come in here and lead this program, man, I promise you, have my back, and we'll watch where this thing goes. Meet me halfway. And every guy heard the same message. And then the next 3 days, I spent calling every single alumni in the program. And I felt like that was an important move because this is a young program. This is only our 9th year of ever having a baseball program. And so it was only like, 145 guys, but I needed to give them time. I needed to help them, on the phone, help them understand who I am, then more importantly, listen to their side of the conversation. Like, where are you coming from on this? What do you want? What do you want this program to be represented by? What's the style of play that you think fits here? And I was just very open to these conversations. And again, a lot of them, are greeted with bro hugs over the weekend at our alumni event. So it's just, I thought that was the most important thing. You've got to connect with your current guys, but then you've also got to literally get back to the fabric of the program. These are the guys that in 2013 started the program. The OGs, we call them OGs, original Grizzlies. These are the guys that started this program. They're 30 years old, but man, they have perspective. And so when I hand them a Be a Dude bracelet over the weekend, they're like, dude, this is so awesome. It's just I think we're only where we're at. And when I feel like we're in a really good place, we're only where we're at because of those first steps, because of using the information, really developing a system and an identity of an environment that is centered around the player. And then I think making sure that the current and then the former players know that it's about them. It'll always, we win a national championship. That first picture goes to our alumni group. We only have that opportunity because of the guys that bled before us. So I hope that gets to the crux of what you're getting to, man, because you got me fired up.
Absolutely.
That's kind of the trajectory of that.
No, sign me up. I don't think I have any eligibility left, but I'm in. So let's, yeah, I don't think you want me. I'm a little washed up, but let's talk about, okay. So, this is a little bit, leaning towards my faith side, but over the weekend, our pastor, Pastor Craig Rochelle, who many people listen to on the leadership podcast, awesome leader, but he talked about, leading with, or the church being truth and grace, right? And he mentioned he said every time in the Bible that Jesus is talking about both of them, he always leads with grace, which is another form of love that I think. So I think that you're right there. But long story short, I think we're always maneuvering that line based on who we're with. But I also think that without one, it leads to chaos, but without another, without grace, then you don't get any love. You don't have that relationship. You don't get any trust. Mm-hmm. And so it's always, they have to come together for me. And I would love to hear your thoughts about, okay, so you love on these guys, but you're also holding them to a standard. Yep. What are the standards that you guys set whenever, and I know it's you, but it's also you and your staff. But what did you guys set? What are some different rules that you have? And really, what is, the OG Grizzlies, what does being a Grizzly look like on a daily basis? And what are the standards that you set?
Okay. So now this is really cool to talk through. So our program, very unique. Okay. So when I took over after 7 years, they'd been to 3 World Series already in 7 years. Ever since they were eligible to be included in the national poll, they had been inside the top 10, the majority of that inside the top 5. Our facility, and I'm not saying any of this to brag in any way, just to paint the picture. Our facility is one of the best in the country, hands down. It's a huge piece of the puzzle for me. You've got to have something to sell to, and of course we've got that, and our athletic facilities and our weight room and locker room and everything else. So when you have those things, it's way too easy for those that don't to look at your program at times in a little negative light. Okay. So, and I've been there. So there was a team in our conference that I looked at it and thought they had everything. They played in a pro park. It was a turf field. They'd been to like 3 World Series in the last 6 years. And I think sometimes we get a little bit of that. Teams look at what we've done in such a short amount of time, and it doesn't always welcome you into the fraternity, let's just say. So I understand all that. I get all those dynamics. And I noticed last year, and I felt like this would be part of, the common feeling at the ballpark, but I really got to see it firsthand, certainly from the front rail, is just teams come in and they look at our game as a dog pile opportunity. Could be a defining moment for them to knock off a Georgia Gwinnett to, no different than you go on the road and you play a Tennessee Wesleyan, you play a Southeastern. Like we are one of those teams. You want to knock us off because of the implications that could come from it. And we get that. So what that's done, back to your question, is it's forced us to, we talk about embrace the target. So if there's a target on our back, every game we play, embrace that. And in fact, by embracing it, you welcome it. You welcome someone's best game. So when they get off the bus, they're showing up to play. They're going to come. And again, we saw this last year, man. We played 4 Tuesdays in a row. I'm talking midweek games where teams turned around their number one to face us. So like embrace that. That's a good thing. That's a high level respect that's getting off the bus, coming to that other dugout. What that's going to force us to do is show up. And so back to how do you create that? I feel like the expectation for us is, hey man, the training environment is our most sacred. So you have to show up. You have to be prepared. You cannot just walk your way through a practice where, you can in some programs. That's not going to work here, because if we embrace the target, if we know that our best is demanded, if we know your best focus and your best concentration and, the building competitive people, those things have to happen in our training environment, because we have to embrace the target that's going to be there in the spring. I think that's become, and I talk to our players a lot about that. They feel like that's been the biggest change is, before there was a lot of talent and certainly they won a ton of games. But in terms of grinding daily within practice and getting competitive and being challenged and trying to create an environment that's a tick above the game speed that we'll see out in the World Series, doing that on a daily basis, that is what has gotten them to a point where, we had one of the most competitive falls I've ever been a part of. And watching guys grow year after year, we always bring our perspective back. And so, here we are, we wrapped up the first weekend of last weekend of October, into the first weekend of November. And you're looking at that and okay, how much have you grown in the past 2 months? And there are new players and older players like, good God, man, I've gotten so much better. And I came in at this and now I'm at this. Okay, great. Who have you become in the last year and a half? And just keeping that perspective of in essence, that continuous learner, that growth mindset, that perspective that today is another opportunity for me to sharpen my axe on something. And if I get competitive and if I embrace the challenge, I'm going to come out of this on the better side. And so that's an expectation in our program, is just recognition that you can't go where you want to go in this program if you're not willing to be challenged, if you're not going to get competitive, if you're not willing to lay it on the line. I told this story yesterday, man, and I hope I don't get choked up again because it grabs me by the heart. So we've got in NAI, and I hope I get back to the crux of this, JJ. You got me going, man.
All good. I love it.
But we have a player, in NAI where a guy can go play minor league baseball, get released, and he can come back and play on the NAI level. So we have 2 shortstops, 2 of the most athletic kids I've ever coached. Now, one has completely embraced, what happened in his life. This is the new opportunity. He is way past like worried about what people think. He's way past, laying it on the line and failing. And he is way past that. And he's one of the best players in the country, hands down, one of the best shortstops, 3-hole hitter, the whole thing. Numbers speak for themselves. And then we've got another guy that's now eligible. He had to sit out last year. He's now eligible, and he's battled that. And I kept, I'm really close with Miles, very, very close. And we talk a lot, but we've never gotten to like the crux of what that is. I just continue to remind him of last, it's been a year and a half, is, man, you're fighting to get consistent. Like if you find consistency, if the same guy shows up, your best version of you shows up on a daily basis, man, the sky's the limit for where you can go. But he just can't seem to get it together, and it can't just show up in a couple of days he pulls back. So I'm always, kneeling on him like, man, we got to figure out what this is. We got to get to the crux of this. So he comes in for his exit meeting and we start talking. And I said, again, man, we're back to the same conversation. You have a great opportunity here to not only get innings at short, but go play third, go play second. You can play center for us. I know he's going to work on some pitching. He's going to close. He's been up to 94. Like, you're going to close for us at some point. So we're going to work on all those things. But man, it comes back to the consistency. So why can't we get consistent? And he, thought about it for a little bit, and he came back. He goes, well, I just think there's a piece of that, Coach, man. Sometimes I fight confidence. And the whole room looks at the coaching staff, looks at me like, you gotta be kidding me. This guy, 6'3", 185 pounds, gorgeous looking kid. Like, beautiful girlfriend. He lives in Delray Beach, Florida, beautiful blonde hair. This dude he should be on a calendar shoot somewhere. And you're thinking, you walk in without confidence? You know what I'm saying? You walk to the ballpark. Dude, we've seen you take ground balls. We've watched you swing the bat. You're telling me you battle confidence. And it gives me this jolt. And I jump right in. I go, oh, okay. So we keep needling through. I go, dude, you've got a fear of failure. He goes, yeah, absolutely. I don't want to go out there because everybody's looking at me like I'm a high school draft. I don't want to go out there and fail because everybody's going to be judging me at that point. How come he gets out? Like, he should make every play. He should be the best player on the field. I'm looking around, Coach, there's a ton of really good kids here. Dude, you have an inherent fear of failure. So where we then a couple of days later, we're going back and forth. He's like, I don't want to lay it on the line and let down my family. So I pull back and I go, well, in fact, you pulling back is letting down your family. They want to see you go lay it on the line. They want to see you literally go stretch your limits and know that there's a chance you could get hurt. That's the part that I think our guys, we've won a lot of games here, and we did even a year ago. We win a ton of, and it's great, man. And we'd never take that for granted. You don't just walk out of bed and win games. You work to have the opportunity to win. But where I want our guys to get to is, man, and we keep beefing up our schedule. We play one of the toughest schedules in the country, and we still win games. That's great. But at some point, you got to get out and literally lay it on the line, knowing you could lose, knowing you might like literally fail. And then you're going to have to deal with that, knowing that you gave your best and you failed. And so, again, I go back to that being an expectation of our program is we're trying to really this year develop a relentless attitude within the walls of our dugout that our guys are going to be willing to lay it on the line. And I'll just go back a few years ago, that maybe wasn't always the case. And so now we have the opportunity within this group to really expand on that and move that forward and get to a place where, man, I mean, it's a machine. You start to develop a group of guys that are centered around the same thought and the same attitude and the same, literal grit level, that persistence, that passionate perseverance, that mentality can take you to places that you never even imagined, but you've got to literally embrace where that can go. That's an expectation in our program. Big piece, for us is, as I mentioned a second ago, I want gritty ball players, man. I mean, we've got nice stuff, we've got great gear, and, sometimes we're looked at a little exalted, and that's, hey, but when you play us, man, you're going to figure this out, dude. We're going to be the grittiest team on the field because that's an expectation of our program. You've got to be willing to slide hard and play hard and run hard and tag hard and grind out at bats. And I'm not okay with striking out. That's not a thing we do here, man. It maybe was before. It's not a thing we do here now. And so we need guys that'll get competitive with two strikes and guys that'll battle their tails off in the box and make it incredibly difficult, be literally extremely pesky with two strikes so that we start to expand at bats and obviously get into bullpens quicker. It's got to become a mentality of who we are across every front. On the mound, man, you think we can't pitch in? Man, we're gritty. We'll pitch inside. A passionate perseverance to get in the inner half so we can expand the outer half. It's all those things that I think are part of the way we train, and it's starting to become part of the way that we play. And so that to me is that on the field expectation. And so one more layer deeper, we talk about rules. I don't think we have one rule in our program. I don't have one thing that I've said, hey, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. I'm the Jerry Weinstein. There's no always and nevers. I'm very flexible to a lot of regards. I'm flexible until it ends up messing with what we're doing on the field. And so around that idea, JG, is the fact that we don't buy into drama, and I don't handle drama. I don't embrace drama. We don't like drama. I was talking with a coach over the weekend, and I said, man, how about this? How about in 1.5 years as head coach, we've only had one guy late to weights once, and we've only had one guy late to practice once. It's because he slept in. Like, that's just not what we do here. To me, that's drama. And for an NAI program to say that, it's really tough. We have a couple guys that have been ineligible. Great. See ya. What do you mean? It's in NAI, you got to embrace that. It's part. No, I don't have to embrace any of that. So you're not going to class. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. That's interfering with what we want to do on the field. You got to go. Love you. And I appreciate you. And I value you, but you're not meeting me halfway. If you can't meet me halfway, there's a student athlete piece of this. If you can't meet me halfway, then I'm not going to meet you the other half. I can't do that. That's not the way relationships work. If relationships are one-sided, it's not a relationship. Somebody's getting used in that scenario. So where I go back to is I've laid out all the expectations of how this is going to work, where we're going to go, how we're going to be identified, what our environment's going to look like across every front, person, student, player. How are these things going to be, literally held up to those standards? And then we ask that our guys walk that path. And what I go back to, what I'm most proud of, so I'm going to bring all this back to one thought. What I'm most proud of is that our guys have complete ownership of our program. And when you want to build, everybody wants to build a players program until it's time to give them ownership. Okay, so we have built a players program here. This is a place where dudes come to play because we're not going to get in your way on game day. Literally, the mantra of training is for coaches, game days are for players. My job is to sit literally against that wall, behind that rail, and watch the best team in college baseball play every single night. That's my job. Now, training day, as you mentioned a minute ago, I'm going to be on you, literally on you at a 10, but I'm going to love you at a 20. You're going to know why we're getting on you. We're going to know why we're brutally honest. You're going to understand why we train the way we train is so that we can sit back on game day and watch our guys play. That to me starts to construct the environment we've created and obviously the identity within that. And again, I hope that gets to the crux of what you're getting at, man. Let's just say this, I am 10 shades of fired up right now on a Monday morning, and you got me going. I can't wait.
No, definitely. And so I love following you on Twitter, obviously, but I also like the GGC account.
Mhm.
And so this last week, you guys posted that I really like the coaches series. And so I'd like to go through that here in just a
Sure.
minute, but I really want to highlight your fall competitive teams. So
Sure.
the two names, you got to tell us the story behind the two names that you guys came up with the two teams, but also I know, and you know this being a podcast host as well, people are all in on, hey, what competitions you got, man? Like, what are you doing? What are you competing with? How are you measuring it? All that stuff. So let's just go ahead and jump 2 feet in right here and let's go over that stuff.
Sure. So I took this from Jake McKinley. Again, another conversation that he spoke on the main stage. I've known Jake since we were both, like 22 and coaching. And he brought up the fact he drafted his teams into two teams for the fall, and they competed all fall. And he had all these creative ideas on how they would gain points. And I knew that was something I wanted to do. And we did it last year, and it was fantastic. We ran it back this year. Guys knew it was coming. And again, I'm very transparent with my guys. I let them know everything. I firmly believe that you got to be your best when you're in front of them. You also got to sometimes be at your worst so they can see you're being authentically you. And I let them know, hey, you want to know, again, when I've got time to relax, when I've got two small kids running around, they go to bed or I'm out with a couple friends. You know what I like? I like to smoke a grape Swisher Sweets. I know that it's not like a sexy cigar or some Cubano, whatever those things, macchiato. That's not my space, dude. I am blue collar. You call it white trash. You call it whatever you want, but I am a grape Swisher Sweets guy. So I tell my guys that, and I get them to laugh, whatever. And about 2 weeks later, I'm like, hey, start thinking of your fall teams and let's get those. So the guys are cracking up because the whole team knows. They're talking about in their group chat, and they come in. I say, okay, so Caudell, what are you going to name your team? Swisher Sheets. And I'm like, guys, I don't know if that is social media friendly. I need to ask. So I literally had to go sit down with Dr. Wilson, and we talked about a few things. And I said, hey, last thing I want to bring up to you. So we're doing our fall teams, Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I said, yeah. So they landed on a name. It was a Swisher Sheets. He goes, man, that's actually really creative. I said, yeah, and I felt like I need to support our guys. Our guys want to run with this, and they want to rally behind it, and that's what they want to name their team. And so we ran with that, and it was great. And they ended up winning it. Our point totals were like into the 4,000s. Like they crushed points all fall, and we do that on a lot of fronts. I think if someone's doing this, you want to create as many opportunities to score as many points as you can, because I think the more competitions you do, you start to see it's not about baseball. And so now you're giving other guys within the team to earn points. Well, the more points that you earn, the more you can keep it close throughout the fall. I think our guys have figured that out. It's like, well, one team's down by 150, and I'll say, hey, we're doing this competition day, and it's worth 100 points. Because I'm like, hey, boys, this is your opportunity to get back in the hunt. Like, let's go. You got to show up today. And it kept it really close. And so we do talk about the competitions, man. We do all kinds of stuff. So it's your basic baseball, competitions in terms of we do an exit velocity challenge. You pick 3 hitters off each team. They get 3 swings apiece. Highest exit velo wins. We've done a home run derby, which is very basic. We've done it with the pitchers as well. So we've done an exit velocity with the pitchers swinging the bat. We've done a home run derby with our pitchers swinging the bat. We actually took our 2 player development guys, Brandon and Ford, and each team that chose one of the other, and they both got, I think we did like 8 swings. And first one to hit a home run, and Brandon ended up hitting home run and winning points for his team. And so we do all the baseball stuff. We did a ground ball challenge. We did a pop-up challenge. So you literally take the machine, put all the dials straight up, and we just literally flip baseballs as high as we can. We had a pitcher challenge with that. We do all kinds of the baseball stuff, but to me, it's the other stuff that, again, brings in everyone on the team. So it's not just your really good shortstop. It's not your really good right-hand arm. It gives everyone an opportunity to contribute. And so we do Rochambeau. Rochambeau is big in our program. So we do a rock, paper, scissors day. Literally all teams line up down the foul line, stare at each other, challenge, move to the next guy, challenge. And one team absolutely crushed that. We did a bridge challenge. So literally get down on their forearms and stomach off the ground. They do bridge, a plank, holds. And we had one kid go over 6 minutes on that. We did an Iron Chef competition. And so they have to literally go create an appetizer, a main course, and a dessert. And we have 3 coaches that sit up front, and they bring them in one at a time, and we judge and give points off that.
That might be my favorite one there.
Yeah, it's dude. There's a sopapilla cheesecake that Gavin Heltemus made that is still will always be one of the best desserts I've ever had in my life. And it's things like that just every day there's something. And I mean, like every single day we're giving them something to compete at. And I think a lot of that, again, bleeds back through our training environment. It has to be competitive. And I think it's easier to, have that conversation of, hey, we're going to sit on BP today in terms of tracking these things. Our player development staff having a barrel count throughout the fall. I mean, everything we did, cage work, BP, game, Rapsodos were always out. We kept track of barrels. And so our guys knew they were always being judged. They were always having something to compete with. So exit velocities, guys that stayed true to their profile. Like we spent a lot of time helping guys understand who they are relative to Rapsodo data. And so this is what it says. This is your average exit velocity. This is your average distance. This is probably your most optimal launch angles. And so you need to live within the space and see how it goes. And I watched several of our guys adapt and adopt into these profiles and crush the fall because they started to figure out who they were, not who they wanted to be. Everybody wants to hit balls, out on Collins Hill Road. Everyone wants to do that, but not everybody can, and not everybody should. Everybody should focus on how they can maximize who they are. So you talked about a minute ago, what's an expectation or program. We're doing anything and everything we can to help the best version of ourselves show up to the ballpark each day. So I talked about that consistency. It's the same way inside of our player development system, same way inside of our competitive spirit and practice. We feel like if you recruit the right people that are competitive, that person should get the opportunity to show up each and every day. And so we ran with that. And again, I think it really guides our fall, man. It keeps everything fresh. It keeps, something new to compete at that day. There's always this point total that's coming, and our guys know, and they keep track of it. And anyway, it's really cool. So yeah, that ended up being a really good fall for us for sure.
Oh, that's great. And I know that this next question should be an alley-oop for you, but let's talk about the classroom stuff. I know it's something that you're really passionate about. And so, and by the way, with the coaches series, I did want to highlight that before we move on. If they wanted to find some of the different things that you guys are doing, what's the hashtag, and then why did you guys start that stuff?
Yeah. So the short version is that we, since I took this job, I looked at our opportunity based on social media and also kind of our situation here. We could do some things a little more creatively. So I felt like year one, as you saw, man, we certainly tweeted a lot more. We shared a lot more. We did the pregame coaches interviews and pregame player interviews. And that was a step in forward. And I felt like this year we need to take a bigger step. And I felt like we could run our accounts like an SEC account. And I think it certainly starts at the top for me. I've got to recognize that, well, somebody's got to put these things together. And the most qualified and skilled and actually excited person to do it was Coach Norton, who's our outfield coach. And I have to know that, man, he can't always be at practice if he's up there editing and creating videos. So I have to give in order to gain. And so literally him and I sat down and I said, look, I know this is something you're really good at, something you want to do. So we're going to embrace this, and I'm going to let you run with this, and just know that I'm not judging you that you're not at practice. I know what you're doing. You're helping our program by going upstairs and working through, these videos. And so we just decided, man, what actually started as, hey, we're going to literally just go live from practice. And we did that one time with Mental Game. It was more of, he's like, well, hey, I have a drone and I've got, really good cameras and I can edit. Let's put together really cool, literally coaching content. Like, let's share. Let's be at the forefront of sharing. And I feel like our program, probably above all, shares. You literally can come inside our program and see a drill that we're doing. This is something we do, we really like, and we encourage you to go try it. And we develop these GGC Coaches Corner videos. What that's birthed into, JG, and I don't even know if you know about this, what that's birthed into is I got asked to speak at the Texas High School Coaches Convention, and I started working on this presentation. And I'm like, Kyle, I'm gonna need some video for this base running talk. And we kept talking about it, and we went to go shoot it, and like the day before, and I'm like, man, this is going to be really good, huh? He goes, oh, you're talking about this is going to be, and ended up being a 47-minute video. And I'm like, dude, I don't think we're just giving this away. Like, I can't justify to myself that all this work you're going to put in on this, I'm just going to give it away. So it just got us going on another direction. So what we're hopefully launching this week is grizzgang.com and getting our Grizzgang brand, which is our program brand, getting that out as a landing page for all of our Coaches Corner videos. We're going to do some insider behind the curtain stuff that we're going to share on Grizzgang. The opportunity to sell this DVD, basically on demand video of this base running, and continue to build upon that series in terms of what else do we do offensively? What do we do on the defensive side of things? Program building, mental training, all those things that we feel like we do a really good job of here, but we also can share with other coaches and programs and make them better. So we're really excited about where that can go. And hopefully we have some more information on that, and we'll get that out. But yeah, those videos are out there under hashtag GrizzGang GGC, GrizzGang hashtag. So yeah, you can go search those anytime.
No, I love that. I love that. So, go ahead and take us through. I know this is something that has been talked about a lot over the last couple of years, and that's the classroom setting. And I don't know if it was Tim Corbin who really popularized it, but I know that once he says something, then everybody's like, okay, how do we do that? So
Sure.
let's go ahead and I know that he starts. I think maybe you would probably know this more than I would, but I think he starts every practice off with some sort of session that's like that in a classroom, and they go over different points. But they're Vanderbilt and most everyone else isn't. So how have you been able to take his idea and what they do and then be able to do it and with your program?
Yeah. So whatever that's been now, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think 3 years ago, we shot ABC of the Road Show at Vanderbilt, and I knew about the classroom. I certainly hadn't seen it, hadn't been behind that curtain. I really hadn't needled down on Corbs to kind of get the details behind it. And so when we shot that and we set the cameras up, him and I actually recorded a podcast from inside the classroom, and then recorded, obviously the roadshow segments around it. I really got to dig deep on what actually are you doing in here and why do you think it's important? And it was, man, he convinced me. And it sounds good in theory. That's the really cool, like you mentioned, Vanderbilt does it, so we should do it. Well, it sounds good in theory until it comes time to get practical. And now you've got to show up and be ready and have something to present to your team. And you've got to have a structure and an idea of where it's going. I balance this a lot with our classroom, man. I want to have it, scripted in a lot of regards. I want to know where it's going, but I have to have feel for the team, because there's something that was talked about at yesterday's training, or an article that came out that morning, or, a point that the team has to hear. And you got to have flexibility to keep it relative. Because your guys know if you're talking about this point, and it was actually, you probably should have brought that up 2 weeks ago, Coach. They know, and so I always try to balance the structure versus the flexibility. But I knew that when I got here, to your point, I knew that was something that I wanted to really work to make happen. And what's real, very fortunate, we got a athletics building that literally is right behind our third base dugout, and go right up the stairs, down the hallway, right past my office. We have a classroom, like a full classroom, 42 chairs in the middle, 10 against the wall, the whole computer system with this big screen up top that you can hook your computer up to and teach from. And I remember walking through on the interview, and they show me this classroom, and I walk in and I go, okay, this is it. This is where we're going to have classroom. And so I remember getting the job, and I told my AD, and we had to work through the particulars of how we would do this, because you're talking about 40 guys are going to be walking through the athletic hallways every day at 1:15, and we've got to manage volume. You've got to manage, obviously, language. You've got to manage, foot traffic. So our guys are coming up from practice. They've got, dirt on their shoes. So we've got to manage all these things. But I knew this was something I would walk through the, hellfire to make this happen, because I felt like it could be that important. Every day since I've arrived on campus, every single day we've met in classroom. And it's become one of those things like mental training. I'm going to show you that it's important. It's not just when we have something to say. This is how we do it. And it doesn't have to be 30 minutes. So we have right now, we finished the fall at 1:30 to 2:00. For the last year and a half, it's been 1:30 to 2:00. That's where classroom is set. And then we go into mental training after that. I'm actually going to transition that a little bit, because I'm living and learning here, that sometimes, I get going on a message. That's great. If I don't have a whole lot to present that day, well, that's a 25-minute block. If I crush it at 5 minutes, that's a 25-minute block I've got to now account for within our training plan. So we're actually going to make that 1:30 to 1:45. We're going to start mental training at 1:45. And so I only need that 15 minutes just as a way to have a touch point with our team at all times. I can catch them up to speed on what's going on. I can get the entire day's training plan. Here's how it's going to go. Here's where it's going to be. Here are the things I want you to be prepared for. And then if I have a message that day, hey, I want you to think about this point. I know I mentioned this earlier. I'm not the head coach. I'm the chief inspiration officer. So I've officially changed my title within our team. But I want to make sure I'm giving them something to push them, to inspire them, to direct them where we know they need to go. And we do that every single day. Well, COVID protocols didn't allow us inside our classroom, too many people inside of a small space. We had to move our classroom this year down the dugout, which was really neat, because I still have this as a PowerPoint slide. Hey, if you don't have a huge, athletics building over your third base dugout with a classroom, you always have your dugout. Anybody can do it in their dugout. And I'm glad I listened to that advice, because now I can do it in my dugout. And I had to. And every day we had guys wall to wall wearing masks, and we stayed there for a short amount of time so that we could get our classroom session in. But to me, it's one of the most important things we do. It is the touch point. It's the get on the same page. It's the everyone needs to hear this message. Corbs goes down a lot of rabbit holes, man. He gets into, and I revere this about him. He gets into hygiene. He gets into, and where we want to go in the future is how to handle an interview, learning how to shake hands, learning how to look people in the eye, having your guys present. I have our guys stand up in front of the dugout in front of classroom, and they present. And I make them literally work on public speaking at a place they didn't think they were going to work on public speaking. But it's also, man, you get to the crux of what you're trying to do. You're trying to build better individuals so you can build a better team. So we have so many exercises that we think get to that. We do a hero highlight hardship exercise where a player stands up in front of the team and shares the hero in his life, the hardship he's been through, the highlight that he goes back to. And I'll say this, man, we call our classroom the trust tree. So anything that's shared doesn't leave the boundaries of that group. It's not something we go tell our parents, not something our girlfriend needs to know. What happens in that room stays in that room, but it helps form that room. And so, 40 guys, hero highlight hardship, another 9 coaches, everybody cried. That's part of the thing. You get up there and you share, you get vulnerable with everyone. And there's a lot of tears, man. A lot of tears get shed. But we feel like that's part of the environment we're trying to create, is that vulnerability and that accessibility to each other on a deeper level, that meaningful relationship side of things. So we feel like that's birthed out of classroom, man. Again, something that I will do every single day for the rest of my coaching career, because there's such extreme value that comes from it.
No, that's really good. And I know which stance that you're on, and which the reply to that is we could spend that 30 minutes doing baseball activities. And, I was on that, how many reps can we get, and how much can we maximize time? And just going back is like, how much time do you have to spend reteaching the things that you could have taught in a 30-minute classroom or less, And
well, it would also go back to this, man. I get that piece. I do. I get that quite a bit, man. It's time that you understand that. But where do you land in this? If I build a better person, can I build a better baseball player? That's where I'm going back to. At the end of the day, we are person, student, player in that order all the time. And I'm not going to go, because he misses a ground ball, go chew down his throat because now I'm looking at that player who missed a ground ball. I have to recognize that every individual on our team is a person. I have to fall in love with the person before I can ever start to go coach the player. And so what I go back to is, to me, that point, JG, is short-sighted. Is well, if I hit more ground balls, if I do this, that's great, man. You can do it, and that's going to help them from a baseball perspective. But go back to, I know we're going to head down this road in a little bit. Go back to a mentally prepared player. Go back to an emotionally mature player. Go back to a person that's literally got emotional intelligence weaved within the way they see the world. Someone that we've helped them rewire the way that they view not only their opportunity here at GGC, but maybe their past. Because too often, man, that player that you're trying to hit more ground balls to, he can't move past an emotional hurdle because he's wired in a way to think that the world's out to get him, and that his JUCO coach screwed him, and then his high school coach screwed him, and you're the next guy in line to do that. I think in classroom, I can cut through those things, and I can help rewire the way they see the world and know that, hey, man, not everybody's out to get you. There are some people that have your best interest at heart. Look at the people that you think have harmed you. Did you have a relationship with them? No. So it's too easy to throw fault at them because there's no emotional connection, as opposed to getting connected with your coaching staff, getting connected with the guy next to you, helping understand that, man, we are looking out for you. We love you. We absolutely love you. We adore you. We hold you up in high esteem. Now you're building a better person that will, in essence, build a better baseball player. Now, if you can't get down with that camp, then we probably shouldn't hang out. But where I go back to is, man, that's, to me, the crux of what we're trying to get done. Is at the end of the day, you can judge against wins, losses, trophies, rings, the whole thing. I mean, you can do that to your blue in the face, and just know that'll be someone else's standards. It won't be ours. We're trying to build better people.
No, I love that, and that's definitely a we'll cut that and turn it into an audiogram. I love that for sure.
Yeah.
And I know where you stand. I know we've had 1,000 different conversations, and so I just wanted, because I was the other side of that probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and then you start to boil these things down, and like you talked about with your 39-page paper, which provides clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it comes back to, okay, I want to be able to coach our players. Okay, cool. How do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, at first I have to gain trust. Okay, how do I do that? How do we make behavior changes? All of it comes down to, and I know this is getting deep, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is safety. They have to feel safe. They have to feel fearless. They have to feel like it's okay to fail and get better, and that it's okay in your eyes. And so at the base level, we have to get onto that love and belonging piece and that safety piece before we literally make any changes.
Yep.
And to think that we can make changes without going into that, it's just very short-sighted, because your brain is just going to block it out. Like
Yep.
it doesn't matter. We can't change behavior if someone doesn't want to. And if someone doesn't want to, then we have to figure out why that is, which again comes back to trust and love and the
Yep.
things that you talked about earlier as well. But then you hold them to that standard that you mentioned with you, which would be your truth piece.
Yep.
But let's go ahead and let's go in on the mental game. And I think when people talk about that, they think that it's you have to block out, okay, hey, this is the mental game today. This is the 15 minutes that we're going to spend talking about the mental game.
Yeah.
And then they go to practice and they don't talk about it at all. But we talk about the game being, well, like 90% mental and the rest is physical or whatever. But I think that there are a lot of different opportunities. And sorry, I'm getting long-winded here, but I'm going to hand it off to you in a second. But I think that we lose sight of the fact that, no, we can actually teach the mental game within the game, because the game is our best teacher. And so take us a little bit about, one, there is a great time to use for your 15 to 20 minute block, or I think you said 15-minute block before practice, to be able to teach some of those skills. But then we'll see how they're applied during practice, and we can continue to teach the mental game and competition and strategy and all of those different things, which I would put into the mental game bucket as well. But
Sure.
take us through like step one of what you start with, how you do it.
Yep.
And then even at the end, I want to know, okay, if you're stressed for time, is there a way that we could do it a little bit shorter or longer, or just kind of take us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think this is another, again, I look at it more of like a pivot point. So again, go back to hit more ground balls or invest in the person. Well, I've pivoted in my career. Doesn't mean anyone else has to. I've just pivoted. I'm gonna head down this way and rock and roll. It's the same way with mental game. So again, it was a pivot point for me noticing that as we were talking before we hit record, I know the inner workings of programs like Oregon State and like Michigan and like Vanderbilt, and I also know the inner workings of others. And I watch them play and compete, and I notice that the dudes in the box, the dudes on the mound, there is a different vibe, there's a different feel, there's a different energy up there on the rail. There's just something unique happening. And knowing almost too much to be dangerous, I'm starting to connect all these dots. This is all right before I go interview for this job. And in my head, I'm going, man, I dabbled in this before, and I've known Alan Jaeger ever since I got into coaching. So he's been a close friend, and he pushed me, whenever it was. Now it's been 7, 8, 9 years ago. Like, hey, you should try some of this meditation with your guys. See if they like it. Some of this visualization. See if they like it. My first convention, I got to watch Dr. Ken Revisa speak, and he talked about visualization. He talked about, literally relaxation and heads up baseball and heads up baseball 2.0 and all those things. And I remember watching these teams going, well, man, if I get back to the coaching, I've got to make this a priority. These teams are making it a priority. And this is the stuff that maybe people don't know, but literally Vanderbilt wins the national championship, whatever that's been a year ago. They meditated from day one of the fall through the last day of the World Series, every single day. Okay. So yeah, as you mentioned, everyone wants to do what Vanderbilt does. I understand that. Well, guess what? If it's working for the best of the best, and we're all saying, dude, those are mentally tough dudes. Those guys were prepared. Those guys were ready for their moment. Those guys literally embraced the adversity. They literally walked in the box with confidence. Like, don't you want that for your guys? Because it's hard to ignore our game in that the 15 seconds between each pitch, that's where the mental game lives. Well, that 15 seconds is happening all the time. And I know you probably know this. If you put the action of a Major League Baseball game on display, the action is probably between 20 and 30 minutes of real action. And then you've still got another 2.5, 3 hours to account for. Well, something's happening that 15 seconds between each pitch. There's a conversation happening between their ears. Like when that umpire raises his right arm, whether that batter agrees or disagrees with that call, there's a conversation happening. When he looks over at you to get his sign, he is telling himself something. There is a narrative playing. And so we've got to help our guys navigate that. And that to me, I can't look them in the eye and say, we've done everything we can to get you prepared for this moment if we haven't given you an opportunity to get mentally sharp. That's where I firmly land on that. And again, right, wrong, or indifferent, Butch Chaffin here, you be you, but I'm going to be me. And I believe that is going to be the separator. When our guy is mentally prepared for that moment and yours isn't, talent aside, that's going to help us move forward. So again, I talked with Alan before I get the job. He literally point blank, how are you going to attack mental game? And I said, Alan, I'm back and forth on this, man. I want to do this every day. He goes, okay, then do it. And I go, I know, but am I going to be equipped to do that? Am I going to be prepared to do that? Are our guys going to buy in enough to do that? He goes, they're going to be as bought in as you are. So if you show them that, hey, this is part of what we do, this is actually me investing into you and helping you invest into your development and your career and your performance, they're going to buy into it. And I was laughing because I told the story a couple months ago with our guys. I said, you guys remember the first time I laid you down in left field? They're like, Coach, we didn't know what was going on. No one has ever talked to us about this. Like, we had no clue. And, I talked about how, I'm going to try to take you under the grass. My goal is to help you literally melt into the grass. And you go to a place where you don't even remember that the sun's out and you can't hear that fly buzzing around. But it's about getting to literally a quiet place where you have to navigate your own thoughts. And I laughed because when everybody sat up, like the look on their face after the first time doing it, like, what in the world just happened to me?
I love that.
And then you build upon that because the first time, there's wonder, there's doubt, there's heartbeat, there's all these things you got to account for. What we talk about with our group, man, we're literally equipping people with black belts. So when you start, you're definitely at a white belt. I mean, and it was awesome because we had so many new players. We had 20 new players in our program and 20 guys that had been recruited on meditation, but they had never meditated. And so getting them to become more mindful, there were so many questions. Coach, I'm not very good at this. I'm not very good at visualization. I'm having a hard time, not go walking with my thoughts and staying in the present moment. And Yeah, okay, I got it, man. Yeah, you're just cutting your teeth on your white belt. Trust me. There's a point where it starts to become easier. And by the end of the fall, I got guys that literally come in with, and again, not to give away too much, but you got guys that deal with depression. You got guys that a few guys that deal with anxiety. There was a great tweet that went around this past weekend about the suicide rates and people sharing that, like, hey, if you're thinking about suicide, call me or call this number, because mental health is a real issue. And so, coach, you're looking out for all your people in your program, or are you looking out for all your players? I'm going to look out for all of our people, and I'm going to do something on a daily basis. And that doesn't make me righteous by any means, but I'm going to do something on a daily basis that gives them what probably will be the only 10 to 15-minute period where they just stop, where they just slow down, where they have a chance to literally just distance themselves from stress, from school, from girlfriend, from financial troubles, from whatever, to just enjoy the next 2.5 hours here at the ballpark. And I'm going to give them that gift. I literally tell them, I'm going to give you this gift of quiet. And with that, not to go down a couple rabbit holes, with that becomes, as me as the moderator, that's a whole lot of trust they're putting in me, because I'm the one that's protecting them from a car driving up, from someone walking up and speaking real loud and scaring them, from something happening around them where, by the way, their eyes are closed and their senses are gone. I'm the one that they're trusting is going to protect them and take care of them. It's a much deeper conversation than just getting mentally right. Like, this is, you talk about the trust and love. This is me showing that I love you. I will invest in you. And it's them saying, coach, we trust you that you're going to, protect us. And so we do it every single day. And like I said, 10 to 15 minutes, that's all you have to go into. You don't have to have a sports psych degree. You don't have to be, just completely, versed. You're not going to be good at this the first time you do it. Get over it. It's just like anything you did in life. You weren't very good the first time. You got better the second time. And then over the course of time, you get better. I'm however long I am into this, we did 168 sessions last year. I think by end of the year this year, based on, from hopefully all the way through the season now, we'll be well over 200 meditations. And I hope to continue to get better at this, because now I'm starting to have feel for our players and their breathing. And so I'm literally, this is so funny, JG. And this is again, is how in tune I try to get with our guys, is I've scour the room and I've noticed how their stomach is rising and falling. I notice their body movements. I notice that at the end, when I say, hey, okay, we're going to go ahead and start to bring it back, I watch who moves immediately. Those are dudes that are just hinging on every command. They're literally right there on the surface. And I notice the guys that it takes a little bit and their breathing is consistent. And I notice guys that are fidgeting and guys that never get comfortable. You start to notice who is really like deep within this. And so when they stand up, I go, hey, what kind of day did you have today? Coach, man, I was in there today. Oh man, I was deep into it. I went to visualization. I was working on it. Yeah, I could tell, man. I could tell, because you were consistent. I said, you had a moment there where you stopped and you took a really big breath and then you got back into that flow again. What happened there? He goes, I started to find myself literally, missing swings and misses and swinging at stuff that was out of the zone. I was starting to get into fear and doubt a little bit. And I realized I had to come back to my breath. So I took a big, deep breath and then got back to boom, boom, boom. That to me is the crux of helping them navigate. So to your point, sorry to go on so long, but to your point is, that's not the 10 to 15 minutes. And that's where it stops. It's literally within taking ground balls. It's literally helping them realize they can boot a ground ball. They've got to just go, oh man, and move on. You can't spend time in, oh man. You can't hang out for, hey, I'm going to make this one because I booted that one. It doesn't work. It's not the way the game's played. It's in BP and them stepping out of the box and literally slowing things down and going, I can move on from this. In fact, I'm prepared for this. And so it's all those conversations that we go back to, man. I think it's all the same thing, but it all shows up in games. Stepping off the mound, taking a breath after you walk a guy. I'm not throwing this fifth pitch thinking about the previous four balls. I'm going to lock into this pitch. This pitch matters. This moment matters. I can control this. It's helping our guys realize they have that power.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you think about the game, I think there's like 10 minutes of actual action that happens. And
yeah, some version of that. Yeah.
and there's 3 hours that doesn't. And so what are
Yeah.
they doing in the space between their, stimulus and response to what's going on within the pitch? But
Right.
it's interesting. And so within the mental game bucket, okay, we've talked about meditation, and hopefully there's a lot of coaches that are out there, that are like, okay, I'm going to try this. COVID especially has brought to light a lot of different mental issues that people are having,
Yeah.
and people who are successful and people who we would have never thought are dealing with some of those things. And so, I obviously, if you're trying to build a better baseball player, build a better person, or both at the same time, hopefully. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about how other ways we can teach quote unquote mental game.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that you mentioned was your routine. So making
Yep.
sure that they're doing that in practice. What else would you bucket into the quote unquote mental game? And then how are you guys teaching that in the midst of practice?
Okay. So to your point, routines are incredibly huge. That just gives you a chance to come back to something that we call our process. And then you have your overall process, like the process of your team, the process of your development, the process of your journey. We really don't pay attention to the right side of the scoreboard. We talk about inning by inning, pitch by pitch, and all those things. But it to me, I say that, and every coach goes, "Yeah, we do too." Process for us is a mentality. Process is an identity. Process becomes a lifestyle. So it's no different. I love hearing our guys say this is, they realize, hey, I didn't do very good on a test, but coach, man, it's just part of the process of this class, man. And helping them understand that it doesn't define you. It's only where you're at this moment, but you can pivot and you can move forward. So I think that's a piece of it. Now it becomes part of the way they speak, the way they think. I think that's incredibly important. So what that, in my opinion, leaves back to is part of our classroom sessions, we teach the fact of emotional intelligence is real. So when something happens to you and it hits your spine, it passes through literally emotion before it ever gets to rational thought. And so you've got to help your guys realize that things are going to happen in our game. Umpire's right arm, again, two different opinions on whether that was the right call or the wrong call. Pass ball behind the plate, spiked fastball on the mound, error in the field. Things are going to happen to you, and they have to pass through emotion before they ever get to rational thought. Well, we see what happens when you boot a ground ball and you play for the Bad News Bears. Tanner takes his glove off because it's in emotion, and he slams his glove on the ground. He never gets to rational thought. So for our guys, it's recognition that thoughts will become actions. You cannot walk away from this. When you're right between the ears, your actions are aligned. And so two very specific things. If you go back to thoughts, well, if our players, every guy on our team wants to play professional baseball, no doubt. Well, that's awesome. So there's your thought. Now, do those actions coincide with that thought? Wanting to play professional baseball is much different than acting like you want to play professional baseball. So you probably have guys, I want to play professional baseball. I hear you. How are you sleeping? How are you eating? What's the weight room look like to you? How are you training? What are you challenging yourself to do and get better at? What is your overall development plan? What are you really working on today? You just took 100 cage swings. You're grinding, right? What'd you work on? What'd you get better at? How's that translate to the game? Where's the adjustability in your swing? How are you preparing for different varieties of pitchers? That's where it comes back to. I want to play professional baseball. Do the actions match up? And so helping our guys learn how to literally navigate their thoughts and how to direct them and how to, in essence, be your own best friend and not let your thoughts be, well, I'm my own worst critic, coach. Nobody's going to be harder on me than me. Well, then stop. Let someone else be hard on you. How about you be your own best friend? How about you help yourself climb out of a hole? How about you help yourself find an adjustment? How about you get to solution before you stay in problem? And so it's helping our guys realize that that is a real transition that all of us have to navigate if we want our actions to start aligning themselves with our thoughts. So you talked about what's that look like in training? Well, it looks like body language because your pitcher, so you talk about mental game, when your pitcher walks a guy and he immediately goes to slump shoulders, kick dirt, snatch the baseball, walk around the mound, you better have a coach head out to that mound and have a conversation. Hey, right now, you are literally kicking yourself. You're mad at the umpire. You're mad at something. And there's nothing telling me that you're going to throw this next pitch not thinking about the walk. It's the same way in the box, man. We had a guy last year who struck out and tossed his bat. Guess what, JG? That's happened once in our program. It was that moment because our team understood that's not what we do here. And that is just body language screaming immaturity. Look at me, and I'm not about the team. So that won't live here. So I'm going to attack that. And I did, and it's never happened since. So our guys start to see that, man, body language, your presence, who you are, those things are mental game on display. So I can walk into the classroom, and I've been very vulnerable with our guys. I can walk in the classroom and say, so I'll let you guys know something, man. Like, I'm working through some stuff. I got some stuff going on at home. Daughter having some issues at daycare. I've got this I'm dealing with. I just got out of a meeting. Our budgets are going to get cut here a little bit. I got a few things that I'm thinking about. And what I'm going to tell all of you is that's exactly where my mind's at right now. I'm talking to you, sorting through these things. But what I've got to do is recognize that if I let those continue to be my thoughts, then I'm going to be a very emotionally, spiritually distant coach here at practice today. That's not fair to me. That's not fair to you. So what I've got to do is learn how to navigate those thoughts, compartmentalize them. So in our part of our mental training, as we start to relax, is we build a suitcase. Our players can put any stress, any distracting thoughts inside that suitcase, close it, lock it, and watch it disappear. That is learning how to compartmentalize things. It'll always be there. That stress is going to show up at 5:30 when we're done with practice, but it doesn't have to affect me right now at 2:30. And so helping them realize that I can work through that just like they can, so that my actions show up. My presence is here. My thoughts are here. My focus is here, not on the conversation I had 2 hours ago, not on the stress that was there before that'll be there after. It doesn't have to affect me right now. That to me has been the crux of what we're trying to get guys to become. That's why we've changed it from mental game training to mindfulness training. I want them to be incredibly mindful, very present, but also confident that they can navigate between their ears and bring themselves back to the current moment. That to me is where that's where the rubber hits the road, my man. You've got to come back to the present moment. You cannot take your fourth at bat thinking about a failure in your previous three. You just can't. That's not going to give you the best opportunity to put your best foot forward. The best version of me is present right in this moment. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And man, I don't think that I don't think there's a better way to end the show than that. But I do have a couple of questions for you,
Sure.
and thank you for outlining. Just I think that when people think of the mental game, they think that it has to be so elaborate to get buy-in. But I think it's like you're just pounding the rock every day. I think that's one of those things that it's just like over time, it doesn't have to be sexy. It just, you have to do it consistently. You have to show up every day, which is kind of a good analogy for baseball too.
Yeah.
But I do have a couple of quick hitters for you
Sure.
before we end the show. And again, thank you for coming on and just giving us a look inside of what you guys are doing every day.
Yeah.
But one thing that I want to know, and I think that this is so just it's so relevant to what we're doing now, which is going through COVID, and it's something that we've never gone through a pandemic before, and hopefully we'll never have to again. But what are some different things that you have changed forever, or maybe just one? What is one thing you've changed forever as far as coaching goes because of COVID?
Oh, wow. Not taking for granted eye contact and facial expressions.
Yeah.
Like, it is incredibly tough to look at a group of 40 people and not see a smile or a wink or like a facial move. How incredibly important it is to, as a communicator, to gauge the room and feel the room and be in tune with the room. It forced me into some very uncomfortable and a lot of doubt, especially early in classroom when I was getting used to the masks. A lot of doubt. I'd be talking. Am I making sense? Is this hitting home? Because I needed that validation because I couldn't tell. And so I think from a communication aspect, man, never take for granted that face-to-face conversation and really, as I've talked about a lot in the past, and you and I have talked about, is just being incredibly present. Like, the only people that exist are the people you're talking to, and creating that dynamic. So not only do you get their presence and their focus, but they know that you're giving them yours, and I'll never take that for granted.
No, I love that. That's a great answer. Next question is, what is one drill that your players love that we can steal from you?
Mm, one drill. Well, we did a couple on the coaches' corners that we really like. We got a modified cuts and relays drill. I think's come to find out, not a lot of programs have seen that. So it was something that we came up with that we really liked. Few variances of BPs that we really like. I would say one drill that we really I think makes a ton of sense. We do a defensive drill series, also one of our coaches corner videos, and I was shocked at the response I got from it. Man, I bet I sent that drill series to over 1,000 people, and it was a lot of emails and a little frustrating at times because I'm the one sending the emails. But like, I don't think a lot of people have. I didn't know that until I got into coaching. An older coach said, "Hey, you ought to think about trying to run something like this." When I looked at the sheet, JG, it scared the snot out of me. Like, what do you mean? Look at all. How am I going to? How am I going to teach all this? He's like, trust me. The more you do it, your players start to understand it. It can be as quick as you want it to be, and we've got it down to now, like literally like 2.5 minutes. We're in and out in 20 minutes, and our guys walk away and go, "Holy smokes! 20 minutes just flew by." Because we were working on all these defensive things. And I think we try to sprinkle that in, and it's something, if you're interested, you can email me and I'll send it to you and hopefully bring it into your program.
I love that. And then finally, the resource question: what's one book that if you could gift to every listener that is listening right now, what would it be? And Christmas is right around the corner, so what
Sure.
can they look forward to getting from you?
I would probably, two that would come to mind. One would be the baseball playbook, and Ron Polk and all his genius put this together. And some of it, can be argued, some of it can be shifted and adjusted and all those things. But I just don't be scared to go back to, man, the wisdom that is within our game. So like, maybe a bigger point I'm trying to soapbox is just that people have wrinkles for a reason because they're older, but those wrinkles represent wisdom. And so the more you spend time with older coaches, guys who have been through the fight, you know, young hot shots and young coach, like, that's all been part of the lexicon last couple of days. Like, I get it. And youthful energy is awesome. And I feel like I got some youthful energy. But man, I'm also very cognizant that I probably am not the creator of this idea. So, like CJ Gilman and I were talking last week, somebody 10, 15, 20 years ago put ropes in their cages and just didn't have social media. Nobody knew about it. Like, those ideas have been around, but I think it's just recognition that sometimes you got to go back to the older stuff to know that hey man, this is something that we've forgotten. This is something we could be better at, something we need to work on, and go back to that. The other one is Help the Helper. And this has been something
Sure.
that's come up last week. We did a How About That Right In video on Mudita, which is vicarious joy and another success. And I think that becomes a huge piece of the puzzle when you're talking about building better individuals and better teams. Start to get them to buy into being selfless and recognition that others' success can be their own if they choose to see it that way. I think that literally Mudita and vicarious joy and another success is an arm off the tree of servant leadership. So you start to help people see the world a little bit differently and see outwardly except for inwardly. And then there's an opportunity to become a servant leader in that I'm going to gain where I'm trying to go by serving others. I think it's all the same conversation. So I think it's a huge piece, but Help the Helper lays that out and explains that. It's such a great book. It's recommended to me by Pat Murphy at Alabama. And it's one that certainly has changed the way I view building teams and getting everyone on the same page for the right things. So I'd recommend those two books.
Oh, I love that, and I'm gonna have to pick that one up. It's actually I try and read a bunch, but I haven't read that one. So, Pat coming up with a book that I haven't read that's really good is not a surprise in my mind either, because he's awesome with that stuff. But I will link your social media and your email down below, and I'm just gonna open up the mic for you again. Thank you, Sheets, for coming on and being a constant go-to for just coaching growth. And I know that that's a huge point for you. You want to help coaches in the world, but you're not helping yourself too. So while you're learning and while you're on your learning journey, you're taking us all along with you. And so I think I speak for thousands of coaches when I say thank you for that. But is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners before you go?
No, and please reach out. That's certainly why we do what we do, is to be connected and to connect with others. So many things come from this. Coach, what are your thoughts on this? Hey, coach, do you know a good pitching guy you connect me with? Hey, it doesn't matter. Like, I think the whole what I learned in my time at ABCA is, man, I really love connecting, period. I love that place of helping and talk about help the helper. Like I really enjoy having someone have an issue and I can find a way to help them navigate it, or coach, I'm struggling with this part of my practice plan. What do you think? Or whatever those things are. But also we love to share, man. I think you can't go to the grave with all these great ideas. And don't, again, like I mentioned earlier, don't think that you have some idea that's going to rock everybody's socks. Well, someone's probably thought of that before. So maybe you're doing it relative to your program. So just share it and just get it out there. And, I put out, we did a Grizzly BP, which I put in the video we took from Reaver BP and Tiger BP at Clemson. And then so many other coaches were like, yeah, we've done that for years. Well, that's great, dude. It's awesome. That's what it's about for me, is recognition. We didn't create any of this stuff. It's just helping other people that maybe haven't seen it before dive into something and bring it to their training plan. So again, as we create grizzgang.com, as we continue to share on our social media platforms, as our PD department continues to just think differently to promote our guys, but also show what we're doing in our program, man, we are an open book. Like literally you could show up to Lawrenceville. We'll roll out the red carpet for you. We'd love to share and show off what we got. But I think it's more about being a guardian of the game and making sure that we're doing what we can to promote and grow the game. And certainly I think you can't be out there in that spirit if you're not challenging and thinking differently yourself. So I appreciate the opportunity, my man. Obviously respect you to the ends of the world and love and appreciate our friendship. And I appreciate and am grateful for the opportunity to get on here and share, my man.
Thank you for listening to Ahead of the Curve. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, which can include Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please share it on social media to help get the word out. Once again, thank you for joining us.